There we go.
Happy Monday, everyone. Here we are. I'm Greg Dixon here with Margo Arrowsmith and Betty Withrow. And we've been talking about your perfect retirement living for the last quite a while and various options, various places where you might consider. But today we're going to focus on staying at home, which is often the best choice for many people. And as your sort of health may be failing, you're getting older and you need help with various things, Margo's going to talk about how to find people and best practices for finding people to help you with those things that you might need. So without further ado, Margo, why don't you take it from here?
Hello, everybody. I have said, for those of you who've taken the course, or those of you who are going to take the course, when you go through and never skip your perfect day exercises, and there's more than one, because the first one tells you to figure out what your perfect day is going to be. The others tell you how to use that exercise. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example from that, though. And let's say your perfect day is that you get up and at around 10 o'clock in the morning, you go out and attend to your garden. Now, you need to know what your garden is. Like, for instance, we already know that you want to do yard work or outside work or work in the dirt or whatever it is. And that might be one of the reasons why you chose to stay right where you are or to buy a smaller house, but basically not to go into apartment living or not to go into independent living or a continuous care residential community. Okay, but here you are, and it's pretty easy with the yard work stuff, because you can say, well, I want to do my garden. I want to have a big vegetable garden and a little flower garden, but I don't like doing the lawn. Well, pretty much you go and you hire a lawn service, and they come and they mow your lawn. And, my vote, of course, is that you just keep getting that garden bigger and getting the lawn smaller, but that's just me. Anyway, that's easy. But when it comes to things that you might need inside, and one of the things that I tell people who are retiring or people who are getting older, and I certainly tell their very worried children about, oh my God, what's going to happen if mom needs help? Okay. And there's lots of options, but usually what people think about is a home health service. There's many different kinds of those. Some of them really only offer, it gets confusing there too, because some of them really only offer people who come and they do very, very light housework. They might make a lunch. Other than that, there's not a whole lot that they do, frankly. And they got to be there for 3 hours. There's a reason for that. And there's a reason for that I support. That reason is that the person who comes to your house to do these things isn't very well paid. I mean, that's just the way it is. People who do that kind of work don't get very well paid. So they're not. And doesn't mean they shouldn't be doing work while they're there. It just means that they cannot afford to be at your house for an hour and then travel 30 minutes where they're not getting paid and having wear and tear on their car to somebody else's house. Because there's a whole lot of time in the middle where they're not getting even that very low pay. They're not getting anything. So what most of the home health agencies do is that they say, well, it's got to be a minimum of 3 hours. And some of them say 4 hours. They're actually, now that the price of gas is going up, they're actually leaning towards 4 hours. And I support that for the people who do the work. The problem with that is that there's not always 3 or 4 hours worth of work for them to do. Okay. And I get a lot of complaints. People say, well, she's here for 4 hours or 3 hours. I got to pay her. But, she gets the work done in like 45 minutes and then she's on the cell phone the whole time. Again, I support the workers, but that's not really very good either. What I suggest to these workers that they do is they can entertain, they can talk, they can play cards, they can watch television with you and talk about, play Jeopardy with you and answer and make it kind of fun. But if there isn't that much work to do, they should actually be interrelating with you. Because it's kind of creepy, frankly, to have somebody in your home that's sitting there talking to other people on a cell phone. And frankly, it's very aggravating if you're paying them and they're sitting there in your home talking on the cell phone. I mean, that's an issue. Recently I found a new, somebody who hired a new agency, and they say, well, you can do it for 2 hours. However, if you do it for 2 hours, we charge you more per hour. And to me, that makes a whole lot more sense. Okay. Now that's if that's exactly what you need. Of course, there are also agencies where they actually supply health care. And the name home health agencies, and that is what they're called, is a bit misleading, and I don't think purposely so, but they don't do that. For instance, they can't put your pills in the boxes. They can remind you to take your pills, but they can't set it out for you to do. They can't touch any of that because they have no medical treatment. They're really not supposed to help you take a bath, although some of them do. Some of the workers there have people who've been trained to help people with baths. But you want to make sure that there's going to be enough for them to do. But then you say, but wait a minute, I need help. And if this is all I can get, then that defeats the whole purpose of me staying home. Or even if I'm in a 55 plus, that defeats the whole purpose. If I can't get somebody, if I have to pay somebody for 3 or 4 hours and they don't work that much because there's nothing for them to do, what do I do? Well, this is one of the places where you need to think outside the box again. I read something recently, which I love. And it actually, I think, applies to the program, because what it said was, by the way, because we're often told to think outside the box. I say it to people all the time. However, if you're going to think outside the box, before you think outside the box, you need to know the box. Okay. Again, so I'm gonna harken back to the Your Perfect Day series of exercises that you really need to do, because that's you getting to know the box. But all right. So let's say you've decided that you want to stay home, or maybe you want to move to a 55 plus. However, either you do not want to do housework at all, or you can't do housework. Either you do not want to cook any of your meals, or you need somebody to help you with that. What do you do if you don't want to pay somebody for 3 to 4 hours a day to do an hour's worth of work? And I reminds me back, by the way, when my dad was living with me, he was, I think when he got to be like 92, he decided that he could use a little bit of help. And I found this wonderful woman. It wasn't through an agency. And she was a lovely, lovely person. He thought she was a lovely, lovely person. There was nothing wrong with her. But again, for what little he needed, she'd do like a half an hour's work and then nothing else. And she was nice enough, like she would have socialized with him. And Dad liked to socialize, but 3 hours, 3 times a week, it got to be a bit much. So that didn't work out so well. What he then did, of course, was to hire somebody, because what he really needed was somebody to help him take a bath. His nurse, the traveling nurse, found for him a woman who came in for an hour a day, 3 times a week, and gave him a good bath. Now, when I heard about that, I thought, my father is never going to put up with that. Well, he loved it. He loved it. He loved it. He loved it. I think, you know how none of us really get our back scrubbed? Well, he had the cleanest back in the world, because she did a good job. But here's the deal. But he still needed a few other things. I left early in the morning. He would have liked to have somebody make breakfast, etc. And I'm going to get back to that later. But I did want to bring that in as an example of something that I've lived through, where it just didn't work to have somebody there all those hours. But here's the deal. You don't necessarily have to hire a home health agency. People think, well, I'm old, that's what I should be doing. To get back to my original example, you don't think you have to hire a home health agency if you want somebody to mow your lawn, right? First place, none of them will do it, but you hire a lawn care service. So I have made this suggestion to a few people, because again, they have that problem. Somebody comes, they do the work very quickly. And by the way, not all of them will agree to do a lot of work. There's a lot of housework that they refuse to do. Depends on who you've got. Some of them are nicer, some of them aren't, but it still can be a problem. The best thing to do, and this is what I'm now recommending to a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people, is to hire a housekeeping service to come in and clean your house. I mean, first place, you don't need somebody 9 to 12 hours a week to clean your house. I mean, right now I could use that, but you certainly don't need that every week, right? And in the second place, as I said, a lot of the home health agencies really don't do that great of a job of cleaning house. That's not how they see their position. You hire, and that you can hire once a week if you want. You can hire them every 2 weeks. You can hire them once a month, because those usually they come in a team and they do such a thorough job that you may not need any more than once a month. So you've ended up saving a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of aggravation of having somebody in your house who's got nothing to do and ends up on their telephone talking to people that you don't know and basically annoying you and wasting money. Okay. Now, again, home health agencies basically don't do home health. There are nursing agencies that you can call. So let's say that your second need in order to be able to stay home or in a 55 plus is that it's not, you live alone, let's say, or you live with somebody who can't help you. It's not safe for you to take a bath by yourself or a shower by yourself. Certainly if you have a step-in bathtub and that's how you shower and bathe, definitely not safe for you to do. Well, what do? Well, instead of hiring, again, somebody for too many hours that may not do it, you go to one of the nursing agencies, not home health, a nursing agency, and you say, I need somebody who's specifically trained to come in, 1, 2, 3, heck, if you want 5 days a week, whatever, to help me with my bath. They have people, not only will they do it, not only are they specially trained, but, and most importantly, or maybe not most importantly, but very importantly, they will only stay for the amount of time that it takes to give you your bath. Now, they might talk to you a little bit before, and the one my dad had would talk to him for a little bit after. I mean, she was lovely. Matter of fact, he ended up hiring her to come in before work to make his breakfast with the permission of her employers, of course. But so you see, so now we've got two of these really big problems taken care of, but in much less time. And while each one of them charges more per hour than a home health agency would, it ends up actually costing you less money because they're just not there as much. Because the people who do that work get paid more, and that's what they expect to do when they take the job, they don't expect to be there for 3 or 4 hours. All right, so we've got two of those problems taken care of. Now, the third one is, well, but I really need somebody to do my breakfast, and I'd kind of like a lunch, and maybe even what I'd really like is somebody who'd make breakfast, lunch, and then set aside something that I can heat up for dinner. Well, there's a whole new industry out these days. I first met somebody, gosh, way before COVID, so this was a while ago, who works in Raleigh, who calls himself a chef for seniors. And what he would do is go to people's houses and make food for them. He would bring the food in. They could either shop themselves and have the food there. He'd tell them what to buy, or he would eat. He was full service. He would even buy the food, bring it to your house, and he would make the food, and then he'd package it up so it could be heated later. And again, depending on how much, that was not cheap. I'm going to tell you. So if if you're really kind of, having, money is a real issue, you might want to have them come in once a week and make you 5 breakfasts, 3 lunches, and 6 dinners, but to do it all at once. So you're only paying for a smaller amount of time. But I have noticed that these companies, and some of them are, individuals. This man was an individual who was just doing this around here. But I've noticed that there are more of them all over the country. There's certainly something that you can go on the internet and look for. And of course, as it gets to be a big business, there will be corporations that buy it up. But either way you want to do it, that solved that third problem. So now you've got somebody to clean your house, but it's only there. They don't dawdle and stay on the phone. Probably for less money overall, because they're only coming, anywhere from once a week to once a month anyway, and they do it a lot quicker. They do it more thoroughly. The second thing is someone to help you with a bath. And again, there are health agencies, which are different from home health agencies. They have actual medically trained people who can come in, give you a bath, and then leave. Those agencies, by the way, also, have a service. Well, they'll take all your pills and if you want, and they'll put them in the little boxes so that all you have to do any time of any day after that person leaves is open up that box to that hour, that day, and take it. But somebody comes in and sets it all up for you. A home health agency won't even do that. So that problem's taken care of. And the food, there's a way to do it. And of course, a lot of people, well, certainly people my age, and I know Betty and well, maybe not Greg, because he was in Canada and they probably had better food up there, but we remember those original TV dinners, and they came in these little aluminum things, and the food was god awful. It was the worst. But since then, there's some really, really delicious gourmet food that you can buy at the grocery store in a frozen package. You just throw it into the microwave or the oven, which I prefer to a microwave. So that's also, by the way, a way to take care of your needs. Or if you want, you can hire a chef for a few things, and then and get the rest from the store if you don't want to. But just as I heard myself say, hire a chef, I mean, that's the kind of thing like, I grew up, and I certainly now even think, well, that's something rich people have. But it's available to you too for a reasonable price. So that all three of those things might be totally better for you and make you happier than going to a home health agency. Home health agencies have their purpose. They have their place. If they'd existed when my mom had to put my grandma and grandpa in a horrible place that broke her heart, she could have left them at home. They have wonderful purposes, but they're not for everybody. Just don't believe that's the only option you have.
Okay. Yeah, that's fabulous. So along those lines, I have a niece in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and she's taken on a job recently where she has a client, and she just basically shows up there and does whatever needs to be done. Maybe it's cooking or something, maybe doing some shopping, maybe helping them get to the park or whatever it is, whatever it needs to be.
Good for her. Well, I think one of the reasons she's able to be more flexible is because she doesn't work for an agency, and they're not. That's what I understand. And
she's a company that's hired her. She's gone through somebody, but I'm not sure what the details are.
Well, listen, there are people who work for home health agencies who do a lot of things that are not on the list of things they're supposed to do. And it sounds like your niece is going to be one of those.
Well, yeah, it's like hiring I think it's more like having a nanny or something,
Something like that. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Again, though, what happens, though, is because there's so many people that need these things that the agencies basically, and I hate to say this, hire whoever they can get. I mean, whoever got your niece is very lucky, because a lot of the people they're either worn out, or frankly, some of them don't care that much. Or again, it sounds like your niece keeps busy, but if they will only do what's on that list of things they're supposed to do, there's going to be a lot of time sitting around. Some people don't mind them sitting around, but if you do, then you can do it. By the way, you reminded me of something else. And this is a national franchise also. It's called, we have one here. It's called Seniors Helping Seniors, and they hire older people, people 50 and up, mainly to be, not even to do those kinds of things, but to be companions. And I think your niece sounds wonderful, by the way, because she kind of combines all of that. But with the companion, they might go and take them to the store, although a lot of them don't like to drive with people in their car because there's liability issues. But they help them bake. They bake cookies together. I mean, they do things together. You don't get a lot of that from a home health agency, but I'm glad you brought that up for many reasons, because I love hearing about your niece. But also, Seniors Helping Seniors is it's a national franchise, and it's also a very good solution, and it's a more personable. And if for instance, when people at some point are much older and they don't get out much, sometimes what they just need is somebody who'll come in and talk with them, or play cards with them, or watch TV with them. But a lot of home health agencies don't do that.
Yeah, we've had various organizations. I think there's one, I don't know if it's still running, it's called Meals on Wheels, run mostly by volunteers.
Okay. You just hit one of my buttons. So
okay,
buckle in and be prepared. Meals on Wheels is a very old organization. I remember in the early 70s, It was there. I was in New Jersey then. It existed. What they advertised then and what they still advertise is that it's not just that you get this lunch, which is, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. It depends on how much you can pay, but that they come in and it's like a visitor. Like if you see, like I thought they'd stop saying this because they don't do it. But I saw an advertisement recently for Meals on Wheels, and they had this person smiling and knocking on the door, and here's your dinner, and hi, how are you, and how's your granddaughter, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I have been in people's homes when Meals on Wheels were delivered, and you hear the doorbell, and then you go out, and the truck's driving away, and the meal is hanging on your door. And I have also gone to people's houses where the meal is hanging on the door, in a sack hanging on the door. So if that's what you want, that's fine. I never tell anybody what to do, but what they advertise is not what you get. That's all I'm going to say. And yes, it's still done by volunteers, but it's also, it's a moneymaker. Now, back in the 70s and the 80s, when you couldn't go to the store and buy a decent, prepackaged meal, that really was all there was. But now, frankly, you can go to Harris Teeter or Food Lion or any of those places and get something that's probably at least as good, if not better, than Meals on Wheels for less money.
Yeah, I was just saying in generic categories in your where you're at, there are probably a bunch of organizations that provide those kinds of things. Whatever they are, they're called.
Exactly. I have a client in New Jersey, and her city, they do this once a week on a Saturday. As a matter of fact, because I talk with her on Saturday, so it's always usually when we're there that they drop off the meal. And so, and well, she's a complainer, so it's always too salty. But the point is that, and it's free. Yes, you're right, Greg. You might want to go to your local city and ask them if they do something like that also. But again, it's not gonna feed you 3 times a day, 7 days a week. But yes, thank you, Greg, for mentioning that. You really should look out for other ways of doing it. I'm not going to, again, I rarely come down against anything, but I'm not a fan of Meals on Wheels.
Yeah.
I've seen too much of what they do. Anyway.
Yeah. We have a friend who's got cerebral palsy, and she has people come in 4 times a day. Yeah. Cause she needs help with everything.
Yes.
Yeah. I think they never, one time it wasn't within their range to make a lunch, but I think now they've got somebody in who makes a small lunch for her. But they're really busy. They're coming in and they're going, as you said, they've got to be with her for 30 minutes or something, and then drive to the next one. They're very short of enough people to serve all their clients. So
years ago, I had a client in her early 30s who was a quadriplegic. She could. She could maneuver her chair around, when an electrified chair, not an electric chair. That sounded awful. She kept bumping into walls, so there were a lot of scars on her walls. She could do a remote, she could do her telephone, and if you put food in front of her, she could get probably 80% of it into her mouth. She wanted to live alone. So what happened there, she did a combination because, most people are not ever going to be in this situation. But she did a combination. I think it was Medicare or Medicaid paid for 3 hours a day in the morning. And that's the person that came and got her up out of bed and got her showered and toileted and all of that and gave her breakfast, but could not give her medication. But then there was a city organization that did help people that wanted to stay home. So they paid like $10 an hour, which is not much, towards somebody who would come in the evening. However, she had to find the person, hire the person, do all the tax stuff. So there was a bit of a burden on her, but the city did give her $10 an hour for 40 hours a week. So again, it's a matter of where you live and really looking for the resources. And she, again, she was very bad off, but she still managed to live in that apartment all by herself with nobody else there. So, and she was glad to do it with all the trouble of having to find the person. She was very happy to do it.
Yeah. So there are many. So Betty, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for finding the right level of help that you actually need that's going to improve the quality of your life, because that's the whole idea, is to make life better And so, as Margo pointed out, if having someone there who's not particularly doing anything isn't making you happy, then looking for other ways to get what you actually need to happen is certainly preferable.
Yeah.
And it's quite and more efficient, and probably a happier atmosphere for everyone concerned, because as you pointed out, the people who are not making much money, they're sitting around kind of marking time and contributing that kind of energy into your home environment as well. So you don't really, that's not a happiness thing.
I like what you said about the happier environment, because again, it just goes back and forth. If you're unhappy because they're not doing anything, and they're like, well, there's nothing else I can do, but then they get unhappy because they know you're unhappy, and it's just unpleasant. And there just are other ways to handle it.
Yeah, there are other ways to do it, and then that frees up your energy and your time to be able to do more of what you enjoy and have the kind of interactions that are going to make it a better day.
Exactly. And again, Greg, thank you for telling us about your niece, because we need a lot more like her, because even just the things you listed off that she does, all of those things, that's hard to find, but it's wonderful. So I'm glad she's out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So any last advice for everyone here?
Well, I'm going to give you this piece of advice, is to go to yourperfectretirementliving.com, which I'm sure should be around here somewhere, and look at the course and take the course, because that just what we covered today is just a really very small part of what is offered on Your Perfect Retirement Living, excuse me. I should know that. But you go to yourperfectretirementliving.com. You'll learn more about it. You can see some more of the videos that we've done where we give a little bit of information each week. But there's so much more in there, plus a community and the availability to be able to ask me questions directly. Because once a week I go into our Facebook group, and if whatever questions are there, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can.
Awesome. That's perfect. Okay. Well, I guess we'll call it good for today, and happy Monday, everyone. Any last comments there, Betty?
Go to yourperfectretirementliving.com and jump in. That is the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yes. Save lots of money and lots of grief.
Lots of money and lots of grief. There we go.
Yeah, and create a happier day.
Yeah, great. And I will go back to where we started. Is there's your perfect day. So the exercises. What is your life? What's your ideal life look like? And go through that exercise. What do you really want? What do you not want? And how what are your options? That's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.